Dick, you've been an angel investor for many years. In your new book, The Anatomy of a Growing Company, you discuss your experiences in making investments in both startup companies as well as coaching and mentoring the founders of startup companies and early stage companies. You have many, many lessons from this, and we'd like to give the audience a sample today of some of those lessons. To get the full feature story on making investments and your experiences in making investments, of course, they can buy the book, which we hope they do. To begin, what key things do you look for in evaluating whether to make an investment?
Charlie, that's very basic up front. The first thing is, does this founder, entrepreneur, does he really have and can prove the market needs what he's doing? Because if there's no market, there's not going to be any investment. Number two follows right along. Does his company, his concept idea, have a match for that market need? And then to finalize it, does he have a good understanding of how to develop a market if it's new, or how to get into a market, which we'd help him with, but at least to have an understanding of what's ahead.
Well, it sounds like it all starts with the top line, Dick. Now, what other factors do you look for with the entrepreneur personally?
Well, you start out, and first of all, you want to make sure that he's going to devote full time to it. I've been problems where somebody has another thing going because that's paying income. It's got to be, real devotion, okay? He's got to have a team mentality. I gave up on these one-man presentations. It ain't going to work. There's too much involved, okay? He has to put a little skin in the game, whether it's from his family or his friends, just to show that somebody has enough faith in him. So they're kind of things you start with.
How about how they're going to use the investment money? I mean, I imagine you want to know, is your money going to be well invested?
Well, the organizations I belong to, and we invest as individuals, but they do put out maybe a set of slides that covers things that are important in a 15-minute elevator speech, if you will. That's typical. 15 minutes of presentation uninterrupted, 15 minutes of questions, okay? So you like to see in one of those slides how he's going to use the money. Remember, it's my money, not his. So that's a given. So he has to somehow detail that. If he could do it in a slide, he's got a better chance of another meeting. If he doesn't, we got to pull it out of him. It doesn't say it'll die, but we try to encourage him to do that.
Mm-hmm. What other characteristics do you look for in the personality, the character of the entrepreneur?
Oh, I think most investors, coachability. You have to be experienced in your own way. You may be wrong, but in your own way, after all these different presentations, if you can see if this person's coachable. It's easy to see if they're arrogant, and I'll walk away from that. And the other thing is, I want to see passion. I want that person to really be passionate. And then, most important is, I want the person to be obsessed with making money. Mm-hmm. I don't want to solve a problem in the world or in Africa. That sounds cold, but I'm an investor. So if that person's going to solve some problem and not as interest money, I'm going to walk away from it.
Mm-hmm. Passionate about making money. That sounds like a good quality to have in an entrepreneur that you're investing your money in. You talked about the market and the entrepreneur. What other factors do you look for in that presentation that they make before you'd consider making an investment?
Well, let me say the thing that I'm sure venture capitals and many angels look for that makes it a real plus. Number one, is this an emerging market? We don't want to invest in a product where the market's stable or going away. Number two, is it disruptive technology? And you've seen that with a lot of the social networks. And number three, can you differentiate? There are characteristics of the product and the market you're in, and they're very important.
What do you see most often as a shortcoming in an entrepreneur?
Well, that's pretty easy. I work with students, so in all fairness to them, they're not too far along with some of their understanding. but there would be entrepreneurs. I worked at a local university. But even with those and those that are experienced, it seems to be the cash management. It just baffles them. You see, a lot of the planning they put together is revenue, and then somebody convinced them to put a cost of sales. But they don't really seem to understand the cash. And I'm not sure they get that much in the universities, cash management. That's extremely important. And the other thing is working capital. There seems to be a lack of understanding. If it's a product, okay, you can't just take the revenue, subtract the costs, because there may be inventory involved. This is the same thing with some of the internet service things. I have one student I work with, they're paying for a license. Where does that show up? So it's not just the cost of the individual product and the operation. So those two things, cash management, okay, and the working capital. And we could help them. That doesn't shoot down a deal. We could help them with that, but they must be coachable.
When you say coachable, Dick, do you mean that they'll do what you want them to do, or what does that mean?
I think it means they have an open mind and they're willing to listen. Because look, you could put so many controls on one of these entrepreneurs. And what you could do is you could damage their creativity. But be very careful. See, in the early days when all these funds started, and they started to say, okay, the entrepreneur, we want you to second mortgage your house, we want you to work 80 hours. They started to learn that this guy's being beat on by his wife, he's not really mentally clear. So it took a while to learn, don't do that. So you have to work together. But you want them to be looking for advice. To me, if they're looking for advisors or help, rather than they do it themselves. I worked with one team at university, and it turned out, I won't mention this nationality, but the gentleman who was responsible for the finance part, okay, he never once sat and talked with us. He never went to see the people we were doing this for. He got all his information off the internet for cost, average cost, wages, etc. And that would not be coachable. This is a university thing, so I wasn't looking to put money into it anyway. But that was a shame. By the way, his section got the poorest mark.
Mm. You mentioned due diligence, Dick. Can you describe due diligence? What is it? What's the process that you and your fellow investors go through to do this due diligence?
Due diligence follows if you want to go past, the first or second meetings, and you're thinking serious about investing. The due diligence is a process that will look into all of the aspects of the company. It's the structure, any legal deals. Does the founder have a deal with one of his team? We'll look into if everything. We'll check that we've been told up to that point. If they tell us what the market is, we'll check to see where his information came from. So it's really an in-depth study because you have to be comfortable. So at the end of that due diligence, you have to feel like, oh, I know all I can know. Do I want to go to the next step, which would be a term sheet?
So is that the next step after the due diligence is completed, is a term sheet?
If you're going to go forward, the term sheet will define the aspects, everything of the deal. It's going to define how you're structured, it'll define the board of directors, it'll define the kind of money, whether you're committed to a second part of putting money in. So that's everything you have to both agree to. And that's where you're going to get some tough things. That's where the negotiation takes place. See, negotiation, almost in every presentation, somebody has to ask, investor, what is your valuation based on of the company? And what that person should say, X. If they say that seems high, the worst thing they could say is, it's negotiable. That means they're done. They could keep negotiating. So I tell the people, I brought teams into these different companies, say, if you're interested, do the due diligence, and I'm sure you'll find the due diligence that our number's correct. And I think the investors will appreciate that. But if you say it's negotiable. So after you get done, the term sheet is going to define everything that you both agree to, and that's going to be the criteria for going forward. And you have to put the money in you say you're going to put, and you define, like I say, a board of directors. So that's the milestones have to happen, et cetera.
What if at the end of your due diligence, you find that you have a disagreement over one or the another of the assumptions that go into making the uh, the valuation that the entrepreneur put on the table. Do you sit down and discuss it with them, or do you say, "Hey, look, it's more than some threshold, and therefore I'm just going to walk away"? Or what do you do at that point, Dick?
Well, you're a businessman. Let's assume you've done this for over a couple months, you spent hours on it, and you're still interested. You're obviously going to try to work it out. And the due diligence thing isn't one person. It could be a team. Like one group I go to regularly, Tech Coast Angels. If somebody will lead a due diligence, there'll be few people helping. So it's a very extensive thing. And by the way, it's a great thing for the entrepreneur, even if it falls apart. They've learned a lot from that. They could use it. You see, up front there's automatic things. It's like you tell me you got this product, you're going to do that, the other. And I say, okay, did you validate it? Did you talk to customers? Will those customers pay for it? That's a given in the beginning. The due diligence is really getting into your heart and your soul. Mm-hmm. Believe me, it's a very extensive thing. And I've seen some teams just get tired, they give up. And I think that's dumb because if people are putting the time in, it means they're serious. So how many serious people can you find?
You know, there are a lot of different aspects that go into any venture. I mean, marketing, finance, operations, etc. Uh, how do you get that sort of expertise to put on your due diligence, put into your due diligence?
Charlie, that's the advantage of going to these group meetings.
So these are angel investor groups you talk about.
That's all they are. Yes, yeah. I could sit there and there'll be 30 people in a room, and there's bound to be somebody in that room that has an idea of the technology or the market. And I don't, I'm learning, say, working with the students. I'll give you, for instance, the first student I got to work with, going to have designer underwear. Oh, I'm sorry, designer garments. Get upset when I say underwear. Okay, I say when I need underwear, I tell my wife, as long as it's white, I don't care who makes it. But I've learned the market. So his market, the 18 to 32-year-old, definitely believes in designer garments. So I worked with him for a year or so, and he kept going and getting better, and he raised quite a bit of money on Kickstarter. Before you know it, he had a couple national trying to do something with him. And he was doing pretty good on the internet alone. So you see, I didn't know that market, but I was still a help to him, I believe, by getting in touch with the right people. We had one of the angels in a group at 20 years in the garment industry. Where could you find it? So, and it was all free help at the university. So that's, yes, you got to make sure that you have that going for you before. You got to be comfortable. I can't think of a better word. Let me say this. People say, what does an investor look for? You heard the expression location, 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 right?
Right.
And sometimes the investments like this, it's management, management, management. And I say, no, it's comfort, comfort, comfort.
Now, that's from an investment point of view. You know, overall, Dick, do you believe you have any methods or formulas for successful investments?
Yeah, I learned along the way to look at the successes and failures. And no doubt, more people have failures than successes. In fact, you'll find articles every once in a while, Wall Street Journal, 4 out of 5 ventures fail. Now, fail doesn't mean the company collapsed. It may mean they'll never get their money out. The thing just gets enough to pay the team. So I came up with an idea that looking for anyone who breaks a Guinness records, in my mind, my Guinness records, I'm going to walk away from. Give you an example that, first of all, a one-man band. So I put up a threshold, and I'm going to subtract points from stuff, okay? If the person didn't have a team, well, I subtract enough to wipe out my investment. That's a no-no for me.
So there's some things that...
So I would take points away, yeah.
But there are some things, though, that they don't have it. You're just not going to make an investment. If it's a one-man band, you're not going to make an investment,
yeah,
right?
So I'm saying I take enough points off away.
Okay.
But I sit there and I take points away for certain things.
Yeah.
If they don't have a finance person identified, don't have to be part of the team, but it's going to work with them. If they don't believe in having an advisory board to start out with, mentors, so I take a few points off. So it works maybe for me. I can only tell from recent investments to see if they turn out.
So I think it'd be things like if they're not coachable, you're probably not going to
Yeah,
make an
it's one of them.
investment.
Yes, you learn fast.
Hey, gee, if they don't have a team, if they're a one-man band, you're not going to make an investment. Certainly, if there's not a market out there, or there's not a good match, or they can't show you that there's a good match for what they're doing, you're not going to make an
Yeah,
investment.
there's judgments. Like for instance, if they believe they're going to have a new product design out in 6 or 7 months, that's crazy. If they believe they're going to reach cash break even, say in 12 months, and to me it looks like 3 years. See, that doesn't say you kill the deal, because you may still want to talk to them. But I would take points off. So if there's enough for that, and they don't understand working capital because somebody asked them a good question and they said, "Oh, that's no problem." You see, that's what you do. And I'm sure the other ones have a point. I've seen startups valued many times, but there's always a thing in that formula. It's like a P. I got this formula. It's going to be judged on your forecast, your revenue, your cash, etc. But there's a probability factor. Well, if you put 0.05 on any of this other stuff, it's done. So I'm saying I haven't seen anybody. I go to many seminars through my life. How do you evaluate a startup that has no revenue, no profit, looking for the cash, but yet a great idea that's worth listening to? So that's where the valuation becomes a real important point when you're doing the negotiating. That's probably the toughest one to get by. If this inexperienced person thinks just because they work for 3 years not doing anything, sweat equity it's called, no. That's why you're going to get 60% of the company. So it's good to have an idea, and I'm sure everybody has their own experience, and some have their own favorite markets, technology.
No, I think your point's well taken that most investments don't succeed. And I was just looking at a list of some of the early PCs. There must be a list of about 30 of them. And let's face it, only Apple and the Windows PCs are the ones that survived. And even among those Windows PCs, a lot of those didn't survive. So it's a tough world out there. And if it were easy to start a business, I think everybody probably doing it and getting rich, but it's not easy at all.
What I tell the people is that it's very easy to start a company. You can do that within an hour online. But this thing may or may not form a business. A business to me is when there's enough there that you're getting back your time and investment, and the investors are starting to see a chance of getting a return on their investment, an ROI.
No, you've often pointed out the distinction between, you start with a technology, you can make it from there into a product, you can then take that product to market, but then do you have a real business, like you say, one that's self-sustaining, that's returning a salary or other sorts of benefits to you, and also returning to the investors also?
Charlie, the first thing I help take teams to these investment groups through the years also. And when they get the business plan or whatever they have, they show me a presentation. One of the things, I don't see it as a future, so I ask them, do you know that this is an opportunity and not a business? And I've lost a couple of friends because they'll say, go find a partner day one. You got a great thing here, technology. Find a marketing partner. Oh, I don't want to give up anything. It ain't going to work then. Okay? So I tell these people that, the response if they're entrepreneurs, the heck with you. I'll go find somebody that tells me what I want to hear. I say, good. It saves me a lot of frustration.
Sure.
But many things are just ideas. They're great ideas. Now, there's an in-between that's happening. I call it the new culture. A service company on the internet, an application, a mobile thing. Some of the older investors, and I believe this is true, I won't offend anybody, it's very hard understanding that. Okay? That's why in the group, this one group now, we have enough. I used to say 2 years ago, we don't have enough Y generation, X generation. Now we are getting them. And I see, it used to be, if there were 3 presentations and at the end it was asked, what's the interest? Anything like a service or a mobile app, no hands went up. Now, I would say half the deals I see that are being in process, half of them are what I call the new culture. So there is a change to it. They're a little tougher If you had a product, you could sit it, touch, feel. But if somebody says, here's what's going to happen, okay? So it's changed, but the investment mentality is still the same. You can't do it yourself. Get in groups. I think that's the best thing you could do.
Well, I guess that applies to both investors, especially in our complex environment nowadays, where it's not just having some sort of a product. You got to have a whole product ecology around there, like customer service and the ability to repair it if need be, etc. And it's just like with the entrepreneur, the investors also have to have an ability to kind of look at the investment holistically and in depth in each one of those areas too. And
That's
you
the
only get
change.
that by working together with a team.
Yeah, and that's maybe more involved and harder working together if you have that difference, between the bit.
Right.
Because look, I don't care what product it is, you have to tell the team, you live, sleep, eat. This investor's got 100 opportunities. How do you close the gap?
Right.
So that's what I work with if I'm bringing a team. But that's the kind of support we'll even give people. There's always a pre-screening before the screening. So that's the thing. Well, you're not quite there. If you change this, you come back. So these investors are there because they want to make an investment. What you got to do is change that priority, get it to be same as yours.
Dick, just to pull everything together for this stage of our interview, you said that comfort is very, very important. It sounds like that is really the bottom line of, when all is said and done, everything's been presented, all the due diligence has been done, is what do you look for? How do you get that comfort level you need to make the investment?
Well, you have to really develop a credibility, okay? So make sure your presentation, if that's your first visit, make sure your presentation is credible. Don't go saying I'm going to do 400,000 the first year and 20 million in the second year. That's breaking the Guinness record. Don't say I'm going to have a 90% margin for a manufactured product. So credibility. Once that credibility is there, it develops what I call trust. Okay? And trust comes from that. Now it's trust. Now you're really being honest with each other, both sides. No games playing. The trust is there. Okay, give me that answer, and then we'll meet then. Look at that and come back and we'll meet again. So it becomes, okay, it's not going to just be a one time and goodbye. And I think if you have trust, now you get comfort. An interesting thing is if you ask an investor, some of the group I know, about that, what's the top thing you like to see? They wouldn't say comfort. But you know how many times I said, Joe, are you going to make an investment in A? No, I'm not comfortable. And I tell the teams I take, make sure you develop that comfort. Because if they're going to write you a big check, you don't want their hand to be shaken to write that check. So you got to work for that comfort zone.
Well, it would seem that the comfort level has two dimensions. One is getting to the answers to the questions that you raise, and the other is that just the way they present it, just their attitude, just the way they go about it, whether they are open and welcoming to your question and responsive to your question.
Yes, just to make it a little stronger, in these presentations, the 15 minutes is devoted to questions. That's where it's going to make or break. So, I try to guide some people, make sure we can develop something so we will make them make a question, right? Okay. Now, in that question session, I also tell them, look, the toughest questions you get are the best because that person wants to make the investment and they have a hurdle and they're hoping you knock the hurdle down. So that's what it's all about. If you got people, I count in presentations, whether I took a team or more often, I'm sitting there looking for an investment, I count the number of questions. I'm telling you, if you get 8 or 9 in some of these presentations, you got a chance. There'll be a call and say, okay, we're going to do the next step. If you get 3 or 4, forget it. So that's what it's all about. The people want their questions answered because they're saying, if I understood that one point, I might go further. And that's what it's all about. And I get back to leave you with that one word, comfort.
Well, Dick, I'm going to close off our interview right now. We're going to do a follow-up interview soon here, but for our audience, for anybody who can't wait for that follow-up interview, I advise you to go out and get Dick's latest book, The Anatomy of a Growing Company. You can get him on his website, or you can also get it on Amazon.com. So we'll be back soon with another interview of Dick Dadamo.
Thanks for your time.